Hey, welcome back to the Brownie Points Podcast. The Browns lose another tough game to the Lions. It was not particularly close. The offense looked horrible. They have all season. We're going to dig into that today, recapping the game, followed by the Brownie Points segment, where we award brownie points to the standout players on offense and on defense. We're going to get into whether we think the Browns should and or will pull the trigger on Dillon Gabriel, and we will end the show with the Browns versus the Vikings preview. But first, quick hits. This is where we're going to just go over some quick Browns news for you before we get into the meat of the episode. Firstly, the Browns make a move. We knew they needed some depth at tackle, and the Browns traded a 2027 6th-round pick to the Texans for Cam Robinson and a 2027 7th-rounder. Cam Robinson is 6'6", 330 pounds, been in the league for 9 years, so he's definitely a veteran, started one game this season. Stefanski seems to be avoiding the QB question, which something means there's a chance that Dillon Gabriel is going to step in, especially because last week he specifically said Flacco would be playing, and now he sounds not so sure. Additionally, some injury news. Cedric Tillman and DeAndre Carter, the return man for the Browns, are both going to be out for a few weeks. We expect we will know more in time, with some more exact timelines for that. And just another quick reminder that the Browns will be playing in London this week versus the Vikings at 9:30 a.m. So you are actually going to have to wake up this week. All right, let's get into the recap. The Browns made a very concerted effort to throw the ball deep in that first drive, and it paid off immediately. Scored a touchdown on the opening drive. And to be honest, it was pretty much all downhill from there. The Lions, picked off Joe Flacco twice, scored 20 straight points, giving them a 27 lead going into halftime. In the fourth quarter, they forced another turnover by strip sacking Joe Flacco and scoring another touchdown. 17 total points scored off of Browns turnovers. The offense struggled again. Quinshon Judkins was pretty much the only bright spot, I would say. 21 carries, a little over 80 yards and a touchdown. Not the gaudiest numbers, but if you watch the game, he fought and earned those yards, every one of them. And you would not help to be impressed if you watch that game. I mean, he is a yards after contact monster. But after that initial start, it really just felt like it all went downhill from there. That doesn't mean there's nothing to take away. Levi, what were your big takeaways from that game versus the Lions?
Yeah, so, I mean, there's definitely a couple points that were different. I mean, the defense played well, and Malik Collins had a couple big plays early, and he was causing problems, and the defensive line had its moments. Mason Graham, didn't have the week he had last week, but that's not exactly surprising. He's a rookie. Not every game is going to be the same way.
Absolutely.
That's kind of how it is. Their run game had moments where it was good, but there were plenty of times where they weren't doing that much. So it's kind of medium, which I think against the Lions is good run defense because, they're the Lions.
Their running game is unreal.
But mostly they had success running away from Garrett. So they ran towards Garrett. They actually had very little success for the most part. So that's different also from Garrett's perspective, in the way that he's approached the game, which is encouraging. But it was a grind for them until eventually it wasn't. Only eventually.
That's what we predicted, right? We said it was going to be. It'll be a little closer at first, and then the Lions will slowly just pull away and further away. And that happened a little fast because of the turnovers, but that pretty much
and the special team touchdown.
That's what I'm saying. Like those other things outside of the typical flow of the game.
Now, when it comes to Joe Flacco, he was pretty uninspiring as usual. He had 2 interceptions, right? One of those was just confusing, and we think he was trying to throw it away. But the fact that he couldn't throw a ball away is also, concerning.
Yeah, the one where he just threw it out there, and you could see the broadcasters when they watched the replay, and they were trying to make they weren't trying to make an excuse, but they're trying to figure out what he was thinking, and they're like, I don't even.
So you got to think he was trying to throw it away, but the fact that he couldn't throw it away is concerning.
Yes,
this is a guy who's supposed to be known for a rocket arm. It's clearly not there anymore. And the second one, again, it's just a little unfortunate that the guy, was held. And Jerry Jeudy was held, and he fell.
Yeah, and it looked worse than it was, but we went back and we looked at it in slow motion, and you could see Joe Flacco. He's looking at the receiver. He's looking at Jerry Jeudy. It's not like he just threw it up there without looking. And then you could see he starts throwing the ball. As Jerry Jeudy is making his break as he's turning, and then he slips. The defender makes an incredible play to leap over him and dive.
The defender also grabs
catch on the ball
around the way. So
but
it
you
should have
can't
been called. But.
Sure, but an incredible diving interception too.
Yeah, all the same.
But Jerry Jeudy not falling. Jerry Jeudy should have been at that spot, and Jerry Jeudy maybe would have caught the ball but it definitely, almost for sure, would not have been intercepted. So, like, well, yeah, we're in agreement.
The point is, one
really wasn't his fault.
One interceptable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that stole a lot from us. And then they start going on the field again later. You remember the game was still within reach-ish. And then you got that really nice play from Isaiah Bond, which was excellent. I mean, he really climbs the ladder and then just catches it right over the defender. Makes
Isaiah Bond had a couple incredible catches in that game.
Yeah, and he's really showing like where the talent is and where you like about him.
Yeah,
what's
undrafted rookie, undrafted.
Right, and undrafted partially because of a legal situation. And he's a guy who in college was a super highly touted prospect, but he didn't produce those last year. So everybody's kind of wondering like, what kind of head case is he? But he's super talented. Everybody knew that, and he's showing some of that talent. And that play was phenomenal. But then again, was it like 2 plays later? Flacco looks to him and he gives up on the play and doesn't look like the play's going to come to him.
Yeah,
he gives
didn't
up.
Love that.
Then Flacco throws the ball to him, thinking he's going to continue his route. Because of that, the defender gets right there, gets 2 hands on the ball, doesn't catch it, luckily, but should have been picked. And that's a situation where it's like, hey, if you want to be trusted, then your quarterback's going to throw a ball to you, expect you to continue to go up there and fight for a ball. Because sometimes they'll say there's no good option. You've been playing well. I'm going to throw up a ball to you and say, hey, go get it.
Right.
And it gives you a shot. And if you're just going to give up on plays, you're never going to get them from a quarterback because now you're giving up an easily pickable.
Yeah, you lose trust with your quarterback. Like that's a big deal. And
that's
who knows how long Joe will be the quarterback. But either way, it's not a good thing. And your coaches, you lose some trust with your coaches, I think.
And the coaches need to get on him about that because that's the thing you have to watch out for. The question is not his talent.
Yeah, you have to imagine
it's not the good plays. It's stopping the bad plays because you also have to know, even if you think you have no chance to catch it, you have to play corner then and make sure it doesn't get picked.
Mm-hmm.
This is about your team. It's not just about you. It's not just about getting catches. Sometimes you got to make a different kind of play. Sometimes you got to tackle the guy who made a pick. Sometimes you got to block for running backs. You got to make other plays. So that's one thing they really need to get on him about. And if they have to bench him to get it across, they need to do that. Like, I'm not saying they should necessarily do that next week, but make sure he's getting that message. So they just need to like take notes on that and be like, okay, let's circle this. Like, as much as you made some good plays, like this is the kind of thing that just cannot be allowed to fly. So
yeah,
I want you to see both sides, the duality of Isaiah Bond, the really good and the bad.
Yeah.
I thought Judkins looked really good. I think all things considered. And again, when you have a pass game that's not non-existent, but close to it.
Outside of that first drive, it was basically non-existent. I mean, they had a couple. It was better. Honestly, they did launch the ball more than they have in the past, and it was more successful than it had been in the past. But it still wasn't exactly fine.
Right. And when you're dealing with that, you're going to deal with more boxes, more teams coming at you.
Yeah.
And he's still
having that.
Had really nice success. A lot more like 8 to 10 yard runs than he did in the week before, which I thought was really great. Yeah, and I just thought he looked good, so that was worth noting. I thought the defensive line was solid. The defense in general was good, but sooner or later you wear down, especially when you're getting touchdowns from, the offense giving things up and from special teams, like we said, and then it kind of got out of hand. So that's kind of my notes on it. It was just, Isaiah Bond, interesting. Quinton Judkins, stud. For whatever reason, we're not using Njoku.
Or Harold Fannin. Another week goes by.
Well, you got a few balls at least. They at least
tried.
Make a concerted effort to go to him sometimes.
Yeah.
And Njoku, we don't try to do anything with, which is strange because he's a matchup nightmare. I mean, he's as much as I like Fannin, Njoku's the physical specimen.
I think the defense is just they know, which is what we're trying to say. Like this type of offense where you're being really conservative, like it's not sustainable because the defense just comes further and further in. They know all you want to do is dump it down to Njoku and to Harold Fannin, and they're going to cover that more tightly and force you to throw it deeper, which is why I think the Browns started throwing it deeper because they knew that, Stefanski knows we have to at least try, otherwise we're not going to get anything going, and they did try, but I think, it wasn't enough of a threat that they could back off of Njoku and Fannin and give those guys a little bit more space. Quinton is really the only player I think that has overcome the lack of complementary football, I think. Quinton Judkins has done an incredible job overcoming that. I don't know that I can recall a single bad run in that game, honestly. I felt like every time he got the ball, I felt like he got more than what was there. A really, really impressive player, which takes us, I would say, right into our Brownie Points segment, which, if you are a first-time listener, the Brownie Points segment is where we award Brownie Points, the namesake of the podcast, to the standout players on offense and on defense. This week, neither of us felt like there was a 3 Brownie Point player. The more Brownie Points you get, the better we thought we did. We didn't really feel like there was a 3 Brownie Point player, but we were both in agreement that 2 Brownie Points should go to Quinton Judkins. We're not going to delve too deep into that because we really did just talk about him quite a bit. Really impressive. He continues to impress. And someday, when/if the Browns are able to play some complimentary football, Quinton Judkins might be up there for top 5 running backs in the league, when they can actually play some
We'll have to see
comp
what
play
that
for.
looks
No,
like.
I'm talking about down the line. I'm talking about
Yeah.
next year, 2 years from now. Who knows? Will be quarterback? Maybe Arch Manning. Who knows?
Hopefully not. I don't know. I'm not so high on
Yeah,
him,
we'll get
but-
into that. Yeah, that's a whole. That'll later in the season. We'll start getting into we'll dig into the college quarterbacks and what there is or is not to see.
Because
But-
I'm thinking it's 2 years from now. I think 2 years from now is the class.
Yeah. Well, who knows? Right.
That's
That's part of our point.
That's conversation for a different time. But
Yeah. And then at one Brownie Point, who do we want to give it to?
At one Brownie Point, I was leaning towards Malik Collins because early on in the game he was wrecking it and he did put in quite a few good plays.
Yeah.
And he was causing a lot of havoc and unfortunately
And I'm in agreement with you there. Malik Collins
later
pretty
in the
solid
game,
but-
it didn't matter as much because later in the game, things didn't go well. But he made a couple really nice plays and I do want to give him credit for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, not a ton to talk about with the Browns players this week, but we got to give the shout-outs where they're due. We're going to merge real quick right into our next segment, Dillon Gabriel versus Joe Flacco. I think this is probably the biggest story right now with the Browns, both locally and nationally, if they're talking about us, I think, and or Shador, honestly, really. But that's the big story right now. Dillon Gabriel or Shador. I have liked that Stefanski has been bringing Dillon in at the end of games where possible. I felt like I would have liked to have seen him come in a few minutes earlier, but he was waiting until it was like really, really, no question, put away. As we mentioned in a quick hit segment, Kevin Stefanski seems to be a little bit less sure, or at least less sure about what he's telling the media as far as who's going to start next week. But here's my point. The Browns have this year have averaged 14 points a game. That is 1-4. 14 points per game. And Flacco had 2 picks in the last game. Yes, we only felt like one was against him, but there's a lot of picks going around. What do we really have to lose by going to Dillon Gabriel? Like 14, I get it, is not 0. So yes, it can get worse. Maybe with Dillon we average 7 a game. But 14 points a game is not enough to win. So if you're not going to win, you may as well roll the dice and see maybe we get higher. And maybe we can get up to 20 points a game and actually have a shot. Or yes, maybe it comes down to 7. But 14 or 7, you're going to lose. The game against the Packers was a fluke. That's not going to happen. Probably not going to happen ever again for the rest of the season. If they win a game, it's going to be not like that. Right? I don't feel like it can get much worse. Like, I know that it can. But as far as results go, which is all that really matters, I don't think it could get much worse. And so for me, I feel like let's get Dillon Gabriel out there. The only real question is the Vikings the right team to do it against, which we'll touch on in our final segment after this, where we're previewing the Browns versus Vikings game. But what's your general feeling on this? Like, should Dillon Gabriel start this week versus the Vikings, or is it just not the right time yet? Because I think we all know he's got to start at some point.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. First of all, side note, that also means Dillon Gabriel scored about a little over 12% of our points for the season.
Oh, don't,
just on that one
don't
touchdown
say that.
pass.
Don't say that.
I mean, yeah. It was just kind of funny if you think about it.
Yeah, it's hilarious. No,
I mean, he
I
played
know,
so
I know,
little. He
I
had
know.
1.5 drives. I mean, if you can count that Lions game as like a drive, which they didn't even give him a real chance. They were just like, oh, just on 3rd and long, just that one time. That's you
Yeah.
one pass. You don't even get a practice like screen on 2nd down. Like, no, it was like, okay. It kind of felt like they were like, oh, we don't want him to put a spark and then make the noise louder if we don't want to go to him next week. Maybe I'm overthinking
Well, that's
it.
no. I don't think you're completely overthinking that because they waited until that game was put away,
Dead and buried.
Not just finished, but dead and buried. Coffin is nailed. The coffin is in the dirt. The dirt has covered up the coffin. Then they put him in. I felt like they should have put him in a couple minutes earlier, but
The
like
drive
I said,
before.
Yeah, the drive before that. I would have
that
liked
one.
to see him get like one drive out of it,
So,
but
yeah.
regardless, is it time?
I mean, I think it's time. The question I think is not is it time in terms of making a decision to move to Dillon. It's for Dillon's sake. Do we move him this week?
Right.
So I've long said that I think they're going to go week 6 because I thought they were trying to avoid this, right? Because the Vikings not only going to playing the Vikings, who are a super complicated defense and difficult for people to figure out what they're doing, and they hide so much in their coverages, and it makes it a super difficult play for your first game ever. But also, it's in London. But also, the Vikings were in Europe, just this past week.
Yeah,
They played in
they're
Dublin.
staying there. Most
They played
likely.
in Dublin, so they're moving over to England, but it's not that far.
Yeah, it's Europe.
I mean,
That's like Ohio to New Jersey. I mean, that's
yeah. I mean, they went over like a little short hour plane flight.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, and they've been there. They've been hanging out there. They didn't come back. So they were
Right.
hanging out there for the full week. So they're already acclimated. They're in. They're ready to go. We're coming all the way out to London playing this weird game with a rookie in their first game against that defense. I just think there's so much there that they are tempted to pull the trigger, but I think ultimately due to the circumstance and the fact that they don't want to mess with Gabriel's head by putting him in a really tough situation in his first ever start.
Yeah.
For that reason, I think they wait one more week. But I think they're right about there because I think they know at this point, like, it is time. Like, in general, it's time.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you there. That I think we all know that it's Dillon Gabriel's time. It's just, is it really the right week? And I think that segues us really nicely into our Browns versus Vikings preview segment, because the matchup is really going to determine when Dillon Gabriel comes in, right? As far as the Vikings go, we don't know for sure who will start. Maybe it will be Carson Wentz. He did throw for a lot of yards against the Steelers. He didn't really play that well overall, but he did throw for a lot of yards, so we don't know what's going to happen there. And obviously, J.J. McCarthy and his injury or not injury, we're not sure. The Vikings are a much better offensive team than the Browns. The Browns, as I mentioned earlier, averaging 14 points a game. The Vikings averaging 25, so just a smidge more. The Vikings have a pretty stingy defense. They only giving up 20 points a game this year. And again, the Browns scoring 14 points a game, so it doesn't look too great for that. However, I will say the one thing going for the Browns, before I turn it over to you and hear your thoughts on this, but the one thing really going for the Browns, as we were discussing before the show started, is probably the run game. Because the Vikings' run defense is probably their weakness. They give up about 109 rushing yards per game, 4.5 yards per carry to opposing running backs. Quinton Judkins, as we mentioned, has been a monster. The only thing is if they can continue to flummox Joe Flacco at quarterback, and they might be able to, I think, hold back Quinton Judkins. However, Quinton Judkins so far has proven week to week that he can succeed even without complimentary football. Maybe not as well as he could be, but he has shown that he can succeed. So you wonder if the Browns win, it's probably going to have to come off the back of, I'm thinking, 2 Quinton Judkins touchdowns, over 100 yards, somewhere between 100 and 150 yards, 2 touchdowns, and obviously the defense also plays well. What's your feeling on this game coming into it?
Yeah, so one note too, on the run defense. So first of all, not very good, right? But also, if you look at who they've played, they did play the Falcons, who are a good running team, but then they also played, like the Bengals, and Chase Brown's not been like great in the run game this year. And they played the Steelers, and Warren was out, so they're just playing Kenneth Gainwell, and they gave up quite a few. So I mean, they've played a few backs that are not exactly scaring people, and still don't have a good your run defense. On the other hand, Brian Flores is a brilliant defensive coordinator, so you do worry about maybe some run blitzes or come up with creative ways to force it, because one thing with the Steelers is that Rodgers is not his best anymore, but he's seen a lot of defenses, so he can he's seen most of the things that have been tried.
You're not going to get him because you confused him necessarily,
not often,
right?
Yeah, so he gets.
You might rush him, and he's not his reaction time is as quick, or doesn't escape the pocket as smoothly. But it's not because
and he still has a good arm.
You threw something confusing at him.
So if you give him a good shot, like you'll get that DK Metcalf big play.
Yeah,
and they don't have the best corners. Like they've gotten away with a lot, but their corners are questionable.
Well, they're a well-coached team. The Vikings.
Yeah, but they're extremely well coached.
Right. I mean, that's,
in terms of like physicality, like speed and things like that, on their corners, right? And so they're really well coached. So you do worry about the run blitzes, and then can Flacco take advantage? If they present that easy spot where it's like, okay, downfield, but it's pretty easy. There were moments in the Lions game where he looked good, but like a lot of times it just feels like he's not able to consistently take advantage of it, and the Vikings will overplay. Mm-hmm. And as such, while Judkins will still probably have a pretty good game because they present a weakness and Judkins is good, I'm afraid you might end up in that 90-yardish spot where like you just don't have enough to challenge them. I do think, again, it will take them a while to score. I think our defense is really, really good. I think you're kind of hoping maybe for McCarthy because he seems to be more prone to making mistakes and making turnover-worthy plays, which that could help your offense, right? Like if you're getting that, then your defense can help you score. Well, that might change the game. But also, ultimately, Wentz made a couple of those mistakes. So what you're really coming down to is maybe can your defense create offense, and then your running game can carry the rest of the way. Yeah, it's possible. Ultimately, the Vikings are going to be set up where they've waited a week over there already. They are also very, very angry. Things against the Steelers are going to be motivated. Didn't go the way they wanted to. I think they're going to look for a comeback game against the Browns, and I'd love to say we pulled out, but I think this is just the final nail in Joe Flacco's coffin, so to speak.
Yeah.
Not his coffin, I mean, but
Yeah.
his playing his playing career.
No,
his starting career. I think it's over this week. I think this is kind of it for him. I think he's going to show up. It's going to be pretty unspectacular, and they're finally going to pull the trigger on Dillon Gabriel.
Yeah, you do get the feeling this is probably, and I'm hoping this is probably the last week we see Joe Flacco playing. All right, we're going to wrap it up there. Right before we touch up, though, I do want to add in our score predictions for myself. Look, our score predictions have been very pessimistic the last few weeks. Unfortunately, we've been right. I mean, this last past week, we pretty much nailed it almost to the exact point. What did we say? 33-13, I think is what we predicted it to be. It was pretty much almost exactly that. I mean, ours were slightly different, but basically exactly the same.
I think it was like 30-13 and 30-10 or something.
Yeah, but we pretty much nailed that one. Not that it was so hard to predict, but I'm just saying. This coming up week, maybe we should be betting more, right? No, this coming up week, though, for me, I think the Browns defense will do a little better versus the Vikings as they don't have such an amazing offense. Carson Wentz, I don't think is that amazing. The Browns do have good corners. I'm seeing the Vikings pulling off about 24 points. I think the Browns offense will struggle against the Vikings again. I haven't seen any reason to think otherwise except for that Quinton Judkins point. But it hasn't been enough in the last weeks to translate to more than 14 points per game. I don't think it will again this week. I think the Vikings are going to win this game 24-14, and that will be the end of Joe Flacco.
I just have 24-17. I have a little bit more, but I think that's going to become via the defense creating an opportunity.
Sure.
Either scoring it themselves or putting them
Give
right
them the
inside
ball
the
at the
red
50,
zone.
the offense moves 10 yards, and they get a 50-yard field goal, right?
Yeah, so I think they're going to create a little bit more. No, I think they're going to create a touchdown.
Yeah.
Like inside the red zone or straight up score. And so that will create a touchdown, and then the offense will itself score like 10 points.
Yeah.
That's why I think is more.
The defense has been doing that the last few weeks, giving the offense at least one, short field per game. All right, we're going to wrap it up there. Hopefully, again, we are very wrong, except for about the Joe Flacco thing. I do want to see him out. I don't really care what the score was. But that will be it for this week, and we will see you again next week. Apologies about last week's episode. Something happened with our video. Not really sure what happened. So it had to be an audio-only episode. Hopefully that does not happen again. And once again, thank you for listening, and we will see you next week.
See you next week.